Well, since the GoPro was working and isn't now, we're gonna try and do this on my phone. So we are back in the shop. We got the drift car back in here. And we're gonna do our ABS delete that we talked about in our last video. If you didn't watch that video, you should, because we touched on a lot of cool stuff we did with the car, the radiator setup, the new intake, new water pump, all that stuff. And let's go take a look at the parts we got for this kit. All right, so I can't remember the YouTuber that I saw this on, but somebody else on the YouTubes had a very similar setup to this one. So we got a few fittings here, and I'm going to try my best. I'm really horrible about descriptions and videos, but I'm going to try my best to find all them part numbers and copy them in the description in case anybody else wants to do this. So this part's for the front, as I have it labeled. So your feed's going to come in this way, and then your two outs are here and here. That's for the front. This is for the rear. So we have the proportioning valve, chase-based proportioning valve. This was like 60 bucks, I think. I think total, don't quote me on this, I think total it's about 180 bucks for all this with shipping and everything. Some of these fittings are like $15 a piece, so when you got 4 of them, it adds up pretty quick. So, but and we're gonna get rid of that nasty ABS brick there. Everything works with it still. I mean, I have the ABS disabled, so we're not using it anyway. But we're gonna get that out of there for space, because when we put the Durrell fans in here, we had to take the mount that goes down in the frame by the radiator and the rack there, and to make that fit. You know, the last video we redid the power steering cooler, which you can see here. Get a light on it. So the power steering cooler is mounted there, and we're eventually going to do an oil cooler probably over this winter. But right now we're going to start tearing stuff out. We're going to get the car on the hoist, and we'll get going on this project. But I just wanted to document it in case anybody else runs into where they want to and or need to do this, because sometimes I've read that the internal proportioning valve, or whatever you want to call it, in that ABS brick can fail on these, and then you kind of either have to do this or replace the ABS brick. So we don't use it. We're drifting with the car. This one's a 01, so I've read and been told by other people that left foot braking is not affected. You can also go in with the HP tuners and the torque management, and I may walk through the steps on how to do that. We'll just have to pull the tune out of this car and show where that is, so we might touch on that on this video as well. Okay, so here's what we currently have going on now that the intake is off. So we temporarily just held it up with a zip tie here for one test and tune event. Here's the power steering line. The big reason we gotta do this is it's just bulking in the way and we're not using it. But I'm also a little worried about the lines here causing an issue, rubbing the belt. Thankfully they haven't so far. This zip tie has been the real MVP on hanging on here. So, but these two are your feed lines here. I believe this is rear, or no, sorry, this is front, this is rear, and then on the front and the sides are your respective channels, if you will, to left and right on the front or rear. proportion. So I'm gonna break those loose and start trying to get these lines fitted up. All right, so we got the ABS unit out. This thing is a lot heavier than I thought it would have been. I'd like to actually weigh it, but it's got to be 8 to 12 pounds, something like that. I don't know, maybe heavier. I don't think I have a scale in here. I do have a scale. Let's weigh this thing, see what it weighs. So, got her zeroed out. Got a rag on it so I don't get it all contaminated. See how much this thing weighs. Like, it is way heavier than I expected. Wow, I'm pretty good. 7.7 pounds.
But you're still wrong.
I said 8. Oh, I went over. The price is wrong. Damn it, I'm over. Thanks for playing. Yeah, 8 pounds, that little thing. It does not look like it would be that heavy, but I imagine a lot of it's that motor. All the copper brushes and stuff in there to spin that motor, but 8 pounds, that's what that ABS unit weighs in these Corvettes. Not what I expected. So, I mean, we've probably cut, if I had to guess, I don't know, 30 pounds out of this car by doing some of the stuff we've done. So I think we're gonna do the rear first, and it should go, I think like this. So we got our feed line, yeah, and then our rear and our rear. So, and then I marked the proportioning valve where it came, and so it looks like you go counterclockwise to change less brake bias to the rear, according to this. So I have it marked, and I'll probably make a note somewhere of how many counts of turns I've done to like have an idea, and we'll have to test it out and see. I mean, we obviously want the front to lock up before the rear. We do have the FDF hydraulic handbrake, but we still don't want like all 4 to lock up at the same time and have a goofy brake bias. I'm not sure how much it'll really matter with like left foot braking, but this is the first time I've ever deleted ABS and put a proportioning valve in a car, so could be interesting. So there it is with all the lines hooked up. We haven't bled it or anything yet. Probably gonna need to manipulate some of the lines here where they go by the rack, and then this main feed line for the front channel for sure. Because right now it's kind of wanting to tweak towards the power steering pulley, and we definitely don't want that. So I'm gonna work on manipulating the lines a little bit, and then we're gonna bleed this system and see how our brake pressure feels. So for now, everything is still kind of just hanging there. My help is about to leave, so we're just gonna bleed these brakes real quick and check for leaks. And then I'm gonna figure out a way to, at least, even if I just zip tie them for now, maybe make something later or take the lines out and bend them better. We're gonna do that. So we're just gonna work on bleeding them now. And bleeding procedure, if people don't know, start from the right rear, right front, left front. You want to start the furthest away from the master cylinder to get all the air out of the line as possible. So this shouldn't take too long, being as we're not going through the ABS module, but we're going to get to it. So we got the brakes bled. We did have, this fitting was just leaking a little bit, so we snugged that up. We'll keep an eye on that as we drive it, just to be sure. Topped off the fluid. We're using Multool RBF 660 brake fluid. I either use that, or like on my C7 I use Castrol SRF brake fluid. I like the Castrol a little bit better, but this car isn't as important for boiling temp on the brakes. So the, turn my light off here. The brain fart, the Multool will do just fine for this car. It's got to be better than the nasty stuff that was in it. The stuff was like black, and I think I've sucked the reservoir out and put some fresh brake fluid in it once already in this car. I did that with the clutch every once in a while too. Just put some fresh .4 high temp brake fluid in those reservoirs. So I'm gonna change my steam port and inlet recovery line again. I'll show you which lines these are. So this one goes from the water pump to the recovery tank now, and I think I'm gonna change it back to the steam port, back to this one, and this down to the heater hose line down there with another 4 Seasons 5/8 to 1/4 inch fitting, or 1/8 inch fitting, 1/4 inch fitting. I don't know, whatever this one is. I can't remember. Here, so we're gonna put that one in. We're gonna put this where the heater hose fitting is now. So this will come off our coolant reservoir tank. I've been kind of racking my brain on this. The car stays cool and stuff, but every once in a while, after a run, the temperature will start spiking just a little bit, and if you rev it up, it'll go back down. And before we changed this radiator setup, it didn't used to do that. And the steam port and this coolant reservoir line usually went to the top of the radiator. So my thought process tells me hot water coming in, cools through the radiator, air usually goes to the top of the radiator. And mind you, we're not using this radiator cap. This is higher pressure than this cap. So this is basically just sealing the radiators, all this is doing. But I really didn't want to weld in another bung here, so I'm trying to figure out where I can put this line, or maybe I just need to cap it off. Not really sure what the purpose of this line is, because down here it tees into the heater hose and it feeds into your thermostat housing. The way these thermostats work, if I understand correctly, is this is your outlet of the water pump, and this is your inlet, and the hot water that comes through here is what opens the thermostat to allow it to go back in to the block, into the heads and stuff. So Hot water coming out, we're gonna put the steam port back to that. And that's how we originally had it, and that part didn't seem to be the issue, but I wasn't sure where to put this one. I'm trying to remember where we had it before we did this. I'm brain farting. Oh, we had them teed into this, that's right. And it was doing it even worse then, but I found out that there was a bunch of air in the system. Did we have a bunch of air in the system? I think that recovery line was maybe routed wrong. I've been kind of looking a little bit, seeing what other people are doing when they do these forward-facing radiators, and usually they're just using a stock C6 radiator, or C5 radiator rather, either or actually, they're about the same, and they have that fitting on the top of the radiator that allows it to go into the top of the radiator there. So, but we're gonna try this. We're gonna swap these around, test it, see what it does. I mean, the car runs cool, like 180s, 190s maybe, like in the run. When I watched the coolant temp, and it didn't do it. It only did like twice the last event that we had last Wednesday night at VIR, where it would creep up to like 218, 220, sitting there idling with the fans on full, and you'd rev it up and it would drop like drastically. It would drop from like 218, 220, whatever the temp it got to like 192 within like 10 seconds or less. So maybe just something's not routed there. Maybe there's still some air in the line. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't think that there is, but because I did vacuum fill it, so, and it took like 3/4 more of a gallon after I vacuum filled it. So really don't think it's air. It's not like getting too hot to be a problem, but we also know that it wasn't there before. So I just try and get these hoses routed to different spots and see what works. So we're gonna put the Four Seasons fitting in on the heater hose, and that's gonna go to the recovery tank. And we're gonna put the steam port back on the water pump, how most people do that. So we're gonna work on that now. So, got the steam port line switched back around. So that's coming off the steam port, under the throttle body, right to the water pump. This is how we had it originally, but we had it teed, and now the inlet recirculation line, I believe it's called. We're gonna tuck this underneath the cover here on this side, but that is now going to the heater hose line to see how that works. With all this, to see if that remedies that slight spike in temperature at idle we would get. Everything else seems to be working good with this, but just kind of chasing that little issue. I mean, I may have to end up welding a bung back into this. I see multiple people do this with steam ports, so I don't think the steam port one's the problem. It's this line. This line, I can't quite make heads or tails of what that's for, because you got coolant lines right there that circulate and take what it needs or expands back into the tank. So I don't know if that one's to like vent gases or what. I don't know, maybe this weekend we might try running with it off if we're still having issues, or yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to make of that line. I've worked on Corvettes for quite some time, but never really modified the factory radiator setup, so I'm not really sure what that hose is supposed to do. Typically, if it was just an overflow tank and it didn't have this down here, I would tell you that that is your expansion, as it coolant heats up and the metal heats up, the coolant expands and fills the tank, and then as it cools down, it sucks it back in and fills the system. But I'm not really sure what this one's meant to do. So they call it like an inlet bypass or something like that on the parts diagram. So if anybody does know for sure, feel free to comment and let me know like where that line absolutely should be, because the other spot I thought about putting it that made sense to me as I kind of like laid in bed at night losing sleep about this was to drill and tap a spot on the thermostat housing and put a barb fitting in there with 1/8 inch NPT and have it come out of there, because then essentially, aside from it being on the high side of the radiator, which I don't know why that necessarily would matter, but maybe it does. I don't know, I could be wrong. It's on the cool side of the radiator, so coolant is flowing back into the tank. I feel like as long as coolant's circulating into that tank, shouldn't be an issue, because then it's going to go back down to the heater hose fittings down here on the bottom of the tank to circulate that coolant. But I could be wrong. I'm not really sure exactly what that hose is for and how that system is supposed to work. I mean, everything else I understand, the upper lower hose, thermostat, the inlet, and the outlet of the water pump, it's all fine and dandy. But that one hose has kind of got me like, well, what is this here for? What does this do? So, but I think I'm going to put the intake back on, get the wheels back on it, fire this thing up, top the coolant off a little bit. I may just vacuum fill it again. We probably lost about maybe half a gallon, mainly on the floor because my drain pan missed, but happens. That's what pig mats are for. So I'm going to put the intake on, put the wheels on, and fire this thing up. So, wheels back on, car's back on the ground. I think I'm going to just vacuum fill this thing just to be sure there's no air in the system, because I really don't want to fight that. And I'm going to show you guys how this vacuum fill works if you've never used one. I used to use one at the dealership, but I haven't had one here at my shop till about a week ago, and now I use it all the time. It's just way easier to fill cooling systems. My buddy tried telling me months ago to get one of these, and I was gonna, and it was just kind of got sidetracked with it. So, but I'm gonna show you how this works. So you need shop air, you need the tool. It's like $80 at Harbor Freight. There's other ones online, Mac, Snap-on, all of them guys, they sell them too. They probably range anywhere from $80 at Harbor Freight to probably $300 from Snap-on or wherever, Matco, what have you. So let's see how this thing works. So there's a few different fittings. This one uses the 40 millimeter, and then it's got like a ball type fitting where if you tighten it down, it expands, so then it's nice and firm in the tank. And this is going to create a vacuum on the system, not pressure. So honestly, you only need this just a little bit tight, and then you're good to go. When everything closes, it's going to be a little noisy, but you hook your shop air up to this side, and then you want this valve shut, because this is what sucks in your coolant when the system has a vacuum. So you got a jug of mixed antifreeze down there, and then we're going to turn this on. It's going to get loud, a little loud anyway. And you can see the gauge pulls. Now it's pulling a vacuum on the system. These hoses might not, but usually your hoses, yep, they'll start to collapse. You can see that it's pinching the hoses down because it's pulling that vacuum on the cooling system. We'll let it get to about 25. If it'll get there, which it looks like it's gonna. All right, so we're at 24 inches of vacuum on the cooling system. The hoses you can see are collapsed. That means all the air is sucked out of this thing. So now what we do is we make sure our little pickup tube here's at the bottom of this, which sometimes is tricky to do. And then we open this valve, and then when you watch the coolant, whoop, it'll suck it all in. So I'm just going to hold this just to make sure. And then as we're doing that, you can see the pressure go down because it's replacing the vacuum in the system with antifreeze. So this is a real smart way to do this. Gets rid of any air bubbles. So we're going to let this thing do its thing. Oh, we got to keep it in the antifreeze or you suck some air in. I'm going to put like a wheel weight or something on this so it stays at the bottom of the tank. That's what I did at the dealership when I was using one. And we're at 0. So we can shut this, unhook that, roll our hose back up. And what I'll do, there's no pressure on here or anything, but if you wanted, you can open that. That just takes whatever vacuum is a little bit left out of the system. And what I like to do is open that one, and that lets kind of all the antifreeze go back into the jug so it doesn't make a big mess. as much as possible anyway. Just set that down for now. And this is the adapter fitting. Usually this comes out with it, but this is a little bit tighter. Now you can see that the antifreeze is right there. I might actually have to suck some out because you're only supposed to have it to the full cold mark. So here's what the kit looks like, minus the funnel. So it comes with a few different adapters. You got a cone type, which I had to use this the other day because the overfill was lower than where this went, so it wouldn't pull a vacuum on a Chrysler, I believe it was. And you got different sizes, 40, 42, 45, 35, 31, and then this tapered cone one. So works pretty cool. That's what the case looks like. Maddox at Harbor Freight, that's who makes that one. So I'm probably gonna have to pull a little antifreeze out of here, like I said, because that's a little overfull. So I'll probably suck a little bit of antifreeze out of there and then get this thing running, let the fans kick on. Maybe go take it for a quick drive. It's dark now and there's deer around here, so might just wait till we get to the event. I think tomorrow I might try and put the hood on. We're not sure. We had to trim the hood for this spot right here when this fitting was down here, and you can see we had to TIG weld another fitting on because once we put the fan shroud setup on, this 90-degree wouldn't clear anymore. So I'm not sure how well the fan or the hood is going to fit here, but we may have to trim it some more. But we might just run it up in Fargo with no hood again, just to make it easy to work on if we need and change anything. Hopefully we don't have to do much of that. Hopefully we don't have to do any of that. That would be super awesome. Just want to go have a fun time with friends and slide into some doors and slide with friends, have a good time. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for now. I think for the brake lines, getting back to this, I'm just gonna zip tie these again to like this, just to kind of hold them off to the side. I tweaked the lines back here, so now they're not rubbing the belt. They shouldn't have any chance to do that. So we just put a little bit of tension on them this way towards the frame rail here. They should be good, I'm kind of thinking. I think later, maybe in the off season, I'll find something more permanent to mount these with some sort of strap or something. But for now, I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I think that's it for now. Maybe tomorrow, if I'm feeling ambitious and I get a bunch of the customer work done, I will try and see about getting the hood on. Really not too concerned about that right now, though. Just want to make sure that everything else is working good before we worry about fabricating the hood, because I still got to get the hood vent. I haven't got that yet, so we can extract the hot air from the radiator setup. So I think right now I might just leave it the way it is and call it good. So I think I might do it. I think we're going to wait on the hood. I think we'll deal with that later. Deal with that in the off season. We got one more event coming up at BIR in like 3 weeks, I think. So hopefully this video wasn't too bad doing this on my phone. I don't want to have my GoPro again. Didn't work for the longest time. Plugged a battery in it. It worked. You guys saw that in the last video. Although towards the end, and you may have noticed, I actually did go test drive the car and I was recording it, but like the frame froze at a certain point where my face was like making a funny face, and all the audio was still recording, but the frame was frozen and just me looking like a dork. So I kind of cut all that stuff out, which kind of ended the video not how I wanted to. So I just put a clip of us drifting the car. That was after we had changed everything the next day, I think, or a couple days later at the track. So and everything shook down good. That's just where we were talking about how the temperature would climb up like 2 times of the probably 30 passes we made in grid. It would just kind of creep up a little bit, and then when I gave it some RPM, it would like spike way back down. So usually this car runs 190, 195. The weather's cooler now because it's fall. You know, it's end of September, early October, and you know we're lucky to see 70 degrees anymore. So, but I think that's gonna wrap it up, guys. Thanks for checking it out again. We'll let you know how the brakes feel with the ABS. I imagine they'll feel just fine. I may have to go in with HP tuners and turn on the torque management to 0 and do that part. And if we do, I'll do a quick video on that for anybody that needs to do that. And we'll just do a quick review of like how the ABS system looks, how it's working, and how to do that in HP tuners. So, all right, guys. Well, make sure you like, subscribe, share, hate, love, do whatever. And we will see you guys up in Fargo for Driftoberfest. It's going to be a good time.